Ale cheit shechatonu lefanecha bezadoinu vishgogo. Al cheit shechatonu lefanecha beyoidim uvlo yoidim. Remember the two al chaits. Kasha, what's the difference between al chait shechatonu lefanecha bezadoinu vishgogo and al chait shechatonu lefanecha beyoidim uvlo yoidim? Anybody know? Shoigig is lo yodea, didn't know. Zodain is he knew. So you guys want martinis over there? You guys are good. Ma'avdel, Reb Shaul, ma'avdel between al cheit shechaton avnecha bezodain v'shgogo and al cheit shechaton avnecha beyoidim v'lo yoidim. It sounds redundant. Zodain means you knew. Shoigig means you didn't know. So we say twice. We say al cheit shechaton avnecha bezodain v'shgogo on Yom Kippur, and we also say al cheit shechaton avnecha beyoidim v'lo yoidim. The Gemara we're about to do is going to answer this question. Let's see. Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. We are by the two dots. Oh, okay, let's see. Let's see. Which means what? You forgot, you didn't know.
No, he didn't forget. It was an accident.
Accident means I didn't know. I didn't know it was Asur, I didn't know that it was Shabbos, I didn't know. Lo yodea, I didn't know. He's just innocent, right? Isn't that shoigig? Okay, zug the Gemara. Let's see the Gemara. Al shara ve'ir shebetor akalois v'chamurois as doinos v'ashgogis. Asks the Gemara, hainu kalos, hainu asei v'lois asei, chamuros, hainu krisis and Mrs. Bezdin. It sounds like it's redundant in the Mishnah. Mishnah says that the soir la'azozal's mechaper on shara ve'irus and enumerates. What are shara ve'irus? Kalos and chamuros, doinos v'ashgogis. Aseis and lois aseis, krisis and Mrs. Bezdin. So the Gemara wants to know, what do you mean? You're repetitive. Hainu kalos, hainu asei v'lois asei. Chamuros, hainu krisis and Mrs. Bezdin. Right? Haida hainu maizid, loy haida hainu shoigig. Gemara asks the question. Haida hainu maizid. If you knew it, that's yoidim. That's amazing. Loy haida, loy yoidim is shoigig. Why does the Mishnah repeat it? Amar Rav Yudah Achakamar. Ashar avir shebetoyer ben kalos ben chamurois ben sha'asan b'shoigig ben sha'asan b'meizid oisen sha'asan b'shoigig ben noideloi sveikon ben loy noideloi sveikon. Which means that a shoigig has two hechetimtzes. One is, I knew that it was a suffix. Yeah? It's a suffix chaylev. And the other shoigig is, I didn't know that I ate a suffix chaylev. Piece of shuman that's suffix chaylev. So on that, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. You don't have to bring an Asham Tali. You usually have to bring an Asham Tali, and that you don't have to bring an Asham Tali. Because the Sorah Mashtaleach is Mechaper. And ve'elu ein kalas, what are kalas? Asei ve'lois asei ve'elu nechamuris, kreisi Mrs. Bezin. So basically the Gemara just says that, you're right, it's repetitive, but we're just explaining, the Mishnah is just explaining what are kalas, what are chamuris, what are shoigig, and what are mezidin. Oh, Valdig, Morris. Good evening. So that's the al-chet shechaton l'fanecha bezodin v'shgoga, right? And v'yoidin of lo yoidin could mean like our Gemara, that even in shoigig you have a case of shoigig where he knew that it could be bola de suffix chaylev, and lo yinoid aloi, which means he didn't know that he was bola de suffix chaylev before Yom Kippur. Right. Okay, we're up to Mirz Hashem. Oh, welcome back. We're up to 4 lines from the bottom of Yud Beis Amud Beis. Hayasei heichedami. We just said that if somebody is over on an asay, the sor lazozal is mechaper on him. right? So the Gemara wants to know, Hayasei Chadami, what was the case? How were you over? What's the scenario exactly? Hey Chadami, Idol have a tshuva. If you didn't do tshuva yet, how could the Sor Lazazla be mechaper and an Aveira, even an Asay, they didn't do tshuva on? Steht in Pasuk, Zevach Rishayim Te'eva. That carbon of a Rasha, of someone who did an Aveira, didn't do tshuva, is a Te'eva. Hashem doesn't want to accept such a carbon. So, what are you telling me? You're telling me that the Sor Lazazal on Yom Kippur is mechaper for an Asay that somebody was over and did not do tshuva yet? There's a pasuk, Zevach Risham Te'eva, no carbon can help you for that. You have to do tshuva. And eat of it tshuva, and if you did tshuva, Kol Yom Anami. You don't need Yom Kippur, you don't need the Sar La'azazel. We know, if a guy is over an Asay, doesn't put on tefillin one day, then what do? You stand there right away, you ask forgiveness, right? The Tanya, Avral Mitzvah Asay, Ve'asa tshuva, Lo Yizaz Misham, Achem Moichlan Lai. He doesn't move until they're meichelim. You don't need the Sar Lazazel if you're ready to tshuva. Tshuva alone is mechaper for an asay. There's certain averas that are so chamor that you need the Sar Lazazel, you need Yom Kippur to come and be mechaper for. But the lowest level on the totem pole, on the ladder of the hierarchy of averas is asay. Asay you can easily do tshuva on, and you don't need the Sar Lazazel. So the Gemara asks, so when the Mishnah says the Sar Lazazel is mechaper on an asay, what kind of asay are we talking about? If you didn't do tshuva, the Sar Lazazel is not going to help you. You're a Rasha. Zevach Rishayim Te'eva. If you did do tshuva, you don't need the Sar Lazazel because you're ready to tshuva. So what's the case when we say that asay needs the Sar Lazazel? You need the Sar Lazazel. Before we get to the teretz, there's a big kasha. The Minchas Chinuch in Mitzvah Shin Simach Dalet asks, the mitzvah vido. He asks, the Gemara here says that if a guy's over an asay and he doesn't do tshuva, he's considered a rasha. He's called a rasha. Yeah, a guy misses tefillin, asay, put on tefillin, doesn't put it on, he's a rasha. Zevach Risham Te'eva, right? The Sar Lazal can't help you because you're a rasha. Zevach Risham Te'eva. So they ask, is this guy kosher le'edis? We know it says al toshas yodcha im rasha, al toshas rasha eid.
Rasha cannot be.
You can't. It says Tashas Yodcha im Rasha, so we learn Al Tashas Rasha Aid. You cannot partner up with a Rasha to be an aid. You can't accept the aidus of a Rasha. So if this guy is called a Rasha because he was over an asay, is he kosher leidus or apostle leidus? The guy keeps all the mitzvahs, just doesn't put on tefillin. Is he kosher leidus or apostle leidus? The Rambam, Hilchas Seidus Perek Yud, gives a detailed list of who's pasal le'edis, brings the pasuk.
He never put tefillin ever in his life?
Let's say he never puts on tefillin. Ezehu Rasha. Yeah, Ezehu Rasha, but is he kosher le'edis or pasal le'edis? So the Rambam describes what a Rasha is. Ezehu Rasha, kol misha over avera, shechayoven oleho malchus, harei zeh Rasha, or pasal le'edis. So the Rambam clearly defines a Rasha as someone who violates a lav that you're chayiv malchus on. All right, that's the level of aveira you need in order to be labeled a rasha to be pasal le'edis. So here in our Gemara asks the Minchas Chinuch, you see that even if a guy's over an asay, he doesn't do tshuva, he's labeled as a rasha, he's defined as a rasha to the point we don't even accept his carbon. Zevach Risham Te'eva. So it's l'chayda akash on the Rambam. The Rambam says that for to be pasal le'edis, you're a Rasha. What's a Rasha? Somebody who's over a lav that chayv malchus. That's how you define a Rasha. In our Gemara says, even if you just merely were over an asay and you didn't do tshuva, you can't have the Sar Lazazel be mechaper for you because it's called Zevach Rishayim and Zevach Risham Te'eva. So how do you define a Rasha? That's the kasha. From our Gemara, it's a kasha in the Rambam, Perek Yud, and Hilchas Seidus.
We defined it not because since it's Sanhedrin. Right? Five opinions.
Yeah.
Someone who is Mevazah,
so 5 levels. So 5 levels.
In Russia, it could be the same thing.
So I think you're onto a beautiful teretz here. I think that depends for what. A carbon. What does it mean a carbon? A carbon means you're trying to come close to Hashem, right? You're trying to be machnia yourself to Hashem and say, I want to get closer. If you didn't do tshuva, there's no way that could help. That's called Zevach Rishayim. With regard to a carbon, you can't be toivel and have a sheretz b'yadai. You can't come and say I want to be close and be offensive in the way that you're saying I'm refusing to do tshuva. That's a contradiction. So with regard to carbon, the Gemara is saying it's zevach rishoim te'eva. If you didn't do tshuva yet, avadi you're a rasha. The carbon can't help you. If you want to know if you're pasal le'edus in a different context, in a different subject, a different category, a different mesechta, a different area in Torah, that's another conversation. For that, unless you do a lav that you're chayiv malchus on it, okay, now you're suspicious. Now you're mamash a rasha. For that, you're pasal le'edus.
There's a machloket on kasha on the Rambam because according to the Rambam, there's a place who said that Benam Shavar Mizot Aseh like tefillin, never put tefillin, can be Raul Le'edus.
Oh, Shalom Aleichem, Nathan.
Raul Le'edus, that's what you want to say?
Rambam says defines a rasha someone who's over a lav that you chayiv malchus on, and the Gemara defines a rasha even if the guy's over naseh. Here the Gemara says zevach Hashem te'eva. Of what?
Of different types of Rishonim.
Oh, okay, so that's what we're saying. It depends for what. In other words, somebody can be a rasha with regard to karbonis. If he's trying to do tshuva, trying to come close to Hashem, he's called a rasha. Doesn't mean that now he's disqualified from Eidus and he is that level category rasha.
Because he does out of taiva, there are different motivations.
Different areas of Torah require different levels of kashrus. So, if you want to bring a carbon, then you gotta be pure. You gotta be clean. Carbon means you want to come close to Hashem. Then you gotta be clean. If you want to be pasal le'edus, if you want to be kosher le'edus, that doesn't require that level of purity like you need when you're bringing a carbon. Carbon means you're trying. By definition, carbon means you're trying to come close to Hashem. So there, even a asay would label you, define you as a rasha. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying.
אז כתוב שמה בראש השנה, נמצא עמוד א', י"א למעלה. כתוב שמה שכתת למד תפילה, פושעי ישראל לגופם, פושע.
Yes.
אומרת שמה שיורדים לגיהנום י"ב חודש וכל זה. אז רשעים, נקראים רשעים, פושעי ישראל לגופם.
But he's still not pasal le'edus, the Rambam says. That's the kasha. That's the kasha. That's what we're talking about. We're saying why isn't he pasal le'edus if the Gemara labels him as a rasha? So we're saying it's different when you want to bring a carbon than you want to give edus. Okay, so the Gemara. So now we have a kasha like this. The kasha is, bottom line, when the Mishnah says that when you bring a sar la'azazel, it's mechaper and an asay. What kind of asay are we talking about? We're talking about he did tshuva. If he did tshuva, he doesn't need the sar la'azazel. If he didn't do tshuva, then the sar la'azazel doesn't help. Says the Gemara, Omer Abzera. Abzera says, actually, the Mishnah is talking about a guy who was over in an asay and he did not do teshuva. So how could the carbon, the sar la'azazel help if he didn't do teshuva? Says the Gemara of a Rebbe, this is Rebbe. The Tanya Rebbe Omer Gevaldig. Rabbeinu HaKadosh Rav Yudah Anasi, we all heard this Rebbe, this opinion of Rebbe in Meshech Chachmah, Al Kol Aveirus Shebat Torah. On all Aveirus in the Torah, Bein Asa Tshuva, Bein Lo Yasa Tshuva. Whether he did Tshuva or he didn't do Tshuva. Yom HaKippur Mechaper, Yom Kippur itself, it's Sumoy Shel Yom Mechaper, that a person, if he goes through Yom Kippur, if he passes through Yom Kippur, there's a Ruach Tahara that washes over him and he becomes mamish purified even if he didn't do Tshuva. Chutz, except for three Aveirus. Meparak oil, Rashi says somebody's a kaifer be'ikr, denies the existence of God. Umekal upon him la Torah, but Torah, and somebody who interprets Torah in a degrading way. Umeifer bris v'basar, and somebody who doesn't uphold the covenant of basar, which is bris milah. Those three Aveirus, only Shem Asa Tshuva Yom Kippur Mechaper V'Lav Ein Yom Kippur Mechaper. So those are the three Aveiras that are exception to the rule. But Rebbe says any other Aveira, even if you didn't do Tshuva, Yom Kippur's Mechaper. So when we ask who the Mishnah, how do you understand the Mishnah? When the Mishnah says Sar La'azazel is Mechaper and an Asay, if you didn't do Tshuva, how can you be Mechaper if you didn't do Tshuva? There it says Rebbe holds Yom Kippur is Mechaper even if you didn't do Tshuva. It's Rebbe. The Mishnah is Rebbe. Now the Rishonim ask very quickly. Rishonim say, what does it have to do with the Mishnah? Mishnah is talking about a Sar La'azazel. Rebbe is talking about Yom Kippur. How do you apply Rebbe's opinion that it's Sumay Shel Yom is Mechaper to answer a kasha on the Mishnah that says the Sar La'azazel is Mechaper and Shar Averis? One is the Sar La'azazel and Rebbe is talking about Yom Kippur. So how can you answer that our Mishnah is like Rebbe who says you don't need tshuva? Yeah, you don't need tshuva because Yom Kippur is Mechaper, but we're talking about a Sar La'azazel. So there are Tva, the Rashba, they all ask this kasha, the Minchas Chinuch. and they all say pretty much the same idea. That Bizmach Beis Hamikdash Hayikayim, Avada, you need the Sor Lazozel as part and parcel of the process of Etzum Shel Yoim. And according to Rebbe, of course Etzum Shel Yoim is Mechaper, but you need the Sor Lazozel. So if you see that Rebbe holds that in Yom Kippur itself, you don't need to do tshuva to get a kapara, so Sor Lazozel is included in that, because the Sor Lazozel is also necessary for that Yom Kippurim Mechaper that Rebbe is talking about. Except for the three Averas that Rebbe mentioned right now, Pyrek oil, which means a kofer be'ikr, Megala Pana Batoira, and a Mefer Brizba Basar. One asks, my time at the Rebbe. What's the reason? Why is Rebbe hold these are the three exceptions, and the rest, all the other Averas, are niskaper with Yom Kippur, and that's why you don't say Zevach Rishayim Te'eva when you bring the Sor Lazazel. Zevach Rishayim Te'eva is in the rest of the year, but not Yom Kippur. How does Rebbe know that? My time at the Rebbe, the Tanya. It says in the Pasuk, Kedvar Hashem Baza. It says that he humiliated the Dvar Hashem. What is the Dvar Hashem? So Zeh HaPoyrek oil. In the word Dvar Hashem, Baza, the Dvar Hashem is referring to the only words we heard directly from Hashem. We learned the end of Makkas. What do we learn at the end of Makkas? That Torah, Darish Reb Simloi, right? Torah is Begematria, how much? Numerical value is 611. Why 613? Teretz is the other two. The first two we heard Mepia Gvur Shamanim.
And Brit is 612.
What is that?
Brit is 612.
Wow, didn't know that.
This one right here.
Okay, who says this? I didn't know that this is how we know this. This is
the Gematria.
very interesting. I didn't know. That's very cool. But we have the 613. Right, two of them we heard from Hashem. So if you want to classify what is the Dvar Hashem, when you read the pasuk Dvar Hashem Baza, says Rashi, you know what the Dvar Hashem is? Shebiza Dibarishin Sha'amar B'Sina Neich Hashem Al-Kech. He's denying the existence of God, because God said, "Am Gash L'Shama Yisrael Al-Piyah Gvura." That is the ultimate Dvar Hashem. That's the only Dvar Hashem we heard directly from Hakadosh Baruch Hu at Har Sinai. So that's referring to Kofer Be'ikar. Umegal L'Panim B'Torah. And what about Megalaponim? So Rashi says once the pasuk says Baza, so the lashon Bezoyin is referring to Divrei Torah. That's Bezoyin. Lavaza is Divrei Torah. That's Megalaponim B'Torah. I think remember we learned in Sanhedrin that Menashe Amelech, Menashe was the one who was Megalaponim B'Torah Shloik Halacha. Ves mitzvosai eifar zeh hamefer briz babasar. Rashi says, she mitzvah yechidus. It's a unique mitzvah, right? Shloish esrei brises. It's a very special mitzvah. So if we're talking about mitzvosai, what is a unique mitzvah from the 613? So Chazal are determining it must be that is a mefer briz babasar. That's Rebbe. He kores tikores. He kores lefnei Yom Kippurim. Tikores la'achar Yom Kippurim. It says double lashon of kores. You're going to get kores. You're going to get punished and einish even before Yom Kippur and even after Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is not mechaper. Yochal afilu asa tshuva. I would have thought maybe even if he does tshuva, you don't have a kapara. It's only if you don't do tshuva on these three averas. That's when Yom Kippur doesn't work. But if you do tshuva on these three averas, then avada Yom Kippur works even for that. So mashma that the other averas bisman shavoyna ba, these three averas Yom Kippur is not mechaper for bisman shavoyna ba. Mashma all the other averas Yom Kippur itself is mechaper. You don't need tshuva, which I saw in the Pardas Yosef, Sefer Pardas Yosef, something very cool. He says that we know the day Rabbi Yehuda Nasi passed away, the Gemara in the End of Ksubis says that a Baskel came out and said anyone who was at the Levaya of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi will be zoiches mezuman l'chai olam haba. Is mezuman l'olam haba. That was the Baskel, and the Gemara says there was a kovis, there was like a person. Maybe it was a shivcha, I don't remember exactly the Gemara, that she was present every day, but she just missed the Levaya, she wasn't there, the Kaivis wasn't there, and he committed suicide. He's like, wow, I can't believe I missed such an opportunity, and the Baskel came out, even this Kaivis is Mezumah L'Olam Haba. Okay, difficult Gemara, how could that be? But either way, the Pardas Yosef says, a beautiful idea, in this week's parasha actually, says, why, Vosapis? Why anybody who's at the Levai of Rebbe's Mezumah L'Olam Haba, like how do we get to that shortcut? So he tells to Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that just like Yom Kippur is mechaper, so too Mises Tzadikim is mechaper. Just like Yom Kippur is mechaper, so too when a tzaddik dies, it's a kapara. So what does Rebbe hold by Yom Kippur? Rebbe holds Yom Kippur, it's mechaper even if you didn't do tshuva. So the Baskel came out in honor of Rebbe to tell everybody that the halacha today is like Rebbe, in honor of Rebbe Pascal like Rebbe. The Yom Kippur is mechaper without tshuva, and you have the Kashem Shem Kippur mechaper. So to Misa Tzadikim is mechaper. Rebbe's Misa, he's a tzaddik, so that's mechaper even without tshuva. That was the Baskel. It matched and it fit Rebbe's shita, because Rebbe holds that it's Suba Shel Yom, you don't have to do tshuva bachlal on Yom Kippur, and therefore if the Yerushalmi tells tzu Misa Tzadikim to Yom Kippur, so by Rebbe's Levaya they had the same benefit l'shitasai. But anyway, says the Gemara, that's how you know that from Dvar Shem Bozo, you know that only those three Averis you need tshuva for in order for him to be mechaper, but not the other Averis. V'Rabbanan. What about the Rabbanan? They dashna differently. He kares ba'olam hazeh, he kares la'olam haba v'oinabah. Shem also tshuva amaze misa mamarekes. If he did tshuva and then he died, then misa is mamarek. Then misa helps. But if he didn't do tshuva, then misa doesn't help. But avada, you always have to do tshuva when it comes to Yom Kippur. That's shitas chachamim and avada. We paskin, right? The Rambam we paskin. Who do we paskin like? It would be nice if we paskin like him, like Rabbi Yehuda Anasi Yom Kippur, that you don't have to do tshuva, but we paskin like the chachamim. Malacha karebi me chavei rov v'lo me chavei rov. So the halacha is like the chachamim. We got to do tshuva. Says the Gemara. Interesting. You know, tshuva is an interesting thing. I just spoke to a yid today. His name is Rabbi Yaakov Haber. I asked him if I could share the story publicly. He said it's already been shared many times. He's a Rav in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and his son lives over here in Alta Vista, Haber. Tzvi Haber. That's his son.
Okay.
And his father told me that when he got married in his early years, they lived in an apartment in Yerushalayim, and there was a guy, a homeless guy, somebody who knocked on doors around the area in the neighborhood, asking for money, asking for a hot meal. And he and his wife, they were newlyweds, so they decided to invite him in, and they gave him a hot meal from time to time. The guy got really comfortable, so he started coming almost every day. And he didn't just come every day, he also started walking in without knocking. You know, like he mamish like felt zechaimish. And they just didn't know what to do. Eventually, their lease was up in that apartment, and they found a new place, a new apartment, and they asked the Shaila if they have to let this homeless yid know that they moved because it's become too much. You know, it's guys like blurred all the boundaries. You know, talking about the idea of blurring boundaries. Thomas Mikdash V'Kadosh, like, you know, he's walking in. So they got a psak. They don't have to let him know. So they moved apartments, and the guy didn't know where they lived anymore, and obviously he stopped coming. I guess he must have still knocked on the other apartment's door, and a new couple opened, whether they invited him or not, I don't know. Long story short, as they settled in the new apartment, he said to me, his wife wakes up one morning, she was expecting, and that's why they moved apartments also, they wanted a bigger place. She puts her foot in her shoe, and she feels something in her shoe. Like something, like an object, is like she takes a look, and she like shakes her shoe out. She sees a scorpion fall out of the shoe. How'd you know? Okay, one second. Hold on. Don't give it away. If you don't know the Maisa. So, she's a scorpion. So immediately they call an exterminator there, like beside themselves. They just signed the contract, at least 2 years, like they can't get out of it. There's a scorpion over here. Exterminator comes, he can't find anything wrong. So okay, pass by another couple of days, he starts seeing scorpions in the kitchen, starts seeing scorpions in the bathroom. Akrav. Yeah. He's like, what's going on? They called like companies, different exterminators. Like, what is happening? At the end, they didn't know what to do with themselves. And his wife was like, you know, she couldn't even stay there without him. She was scared. He's like, okay, we're going to Rav Scheinberg. He was a Talmud of Rav Scheinberg. They went to Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. Immediately, Rav Scheinberg tells him, oh, you have scorpions? Let's see what the scorpion says. So he takes out a Perek Shira. Perek Shira, you know, has all the psukim, different psukim for each animal. Every animal says a different pasuk. He says, I'm sure the scorpion has a message for you. It's very outlandish thing to happen. He opens Perek Shira. Akrav mahu oimer. What does the Akrav say? Unbelievable. Says, Toiv Hashem lakol v'rachamov al kol ma'asav. Hashem is good and kind to everybody. His mercies on all of his creations. So Rav Shamik says, look, I don't know your history. I don't know your whole story. I just know this is what the Akrav says. Do whatever you want with it. So what's going? Like he didn't put two and two together. So he leaves Rav Steinberg. He gets onto the bus to go back home, and as he's on the bus, he looks out the window and he sees that homeless yid, walking the streets. The homeless yid that always showed up at his door. Stop the bus! Stop the bus! Immediately it clicked. He runs off the bus, he embraces the yid, he's like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long, we moved apartments, we got to tell you, would you come over right now? He invited him over. Guy came, gave him a hot meal, and of course, the rest of the story is, the scorpions never showed up again. This is Rabbi Yaakov Haber, Choshev Yid, very credible Jew. And he told me, I asked him if I could share it. I wanted to get him on video a long time ago to share the story so people can hear it directly from, the eyewitness account. Firsthand. Eidus. That's what it was. No, not Kravim. Over here, everybody does chesed all the time. It's a difficult story because Lamaisa, he blurred the boundaries, so you could taina, got a psak halacha, doesn't need to. But no, you always have to make it right. Tshuva is a big thing. You got to make it right. And the Rebbe Shalom has tremendous rachamim to give us messages here and there to make sure that, Okay, weiter. Zog the Gemara. Umi motzas mukmas like a Rabbi. Can you say the Mishnah is like Rabbi? From the Sefer Rabbi Yehudi, Reishanami Rabbi Yehudi. Our Mishnah, we just said, must be like Rabbi. If the Sefer is Rabbi Yehuda, Reishanami Rabbi Yehuda, the Tani Sefer Echad Yisrael, Echad Kanim, Echad Kaim Meshuach, that the Soil HaZozel is mechaper for Yisraelim, Kahanim, and Kaim Meshuach. Man Islay Haisvar, who's this Tana that holds like that? Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds like that. Mechlal, the Reish Rabbi Yehuda, so it must be the Reish Rabbi Yehuda. How can you tell me it's Rabbi? Rabbi Yosef says, no, Rabbi. Really, the whole Mishnah is Rabbi. The Sover like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda that the Soil HaZozel, the Mechaper, and the Kahanim, and the Yisraelim, and everybody, Gans Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Omer le Abaye, Dafke ka Omer ma Rabbi Sover like Rabbi Yehuda? When Rabbi Yosef is saying that the Mishnah is Rabbi, and Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda, in that regard, that Kahanim and Yisraelim are neskaper by the Soil HaZozel, is that Dafke Kamer Ma Rabbi Sover? Aval Rabbi Yehuda loy Sover like a Rabbi? But what about Rabbi Yehuda? Does he agree to Rabbi that Yom Kippur itself is mechaper without tshuva? Or Dilma with the Rabbi Sover like Rabbi Yehuda, after Rabbi Yehuda Sover l'namik Rabbi? Maybe Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold like Rabbi, or maybe no. If Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda in the Seif of the Mishnah that the Soil HaZozel is mechaper for both, maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi also in the Reisha where we say the Soil HaZozel is mechaper and Asay even without tshuva. And why do we say? Why did you say only that Rebbe is the one who holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Why didn't you say the opposite? Rebbe holds like Rabbi as well. The Talmud Tzava like a Rabbi. Just giving the respect. The Orcha de Milsa is to say that a student holds like his Rebbe. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was a Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Loi, Tana Rabbi Yehuda. So it's better to say it that way. But it's lav dafka. Amar Leis, Rav Yosef Satabaya in. No, dafka ka amina. I meant dafka this way. Rabbi Sover like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda, the Soil HaZozel mechaper and Kahanim Yisraelim. Av Rabbi Yehuda lo Sover like Rabbi. Rabbi Yehuda is now hold of Rabbi that it's sumei shel yoim that Yom Kippur is mechaper without tshuva. The Tanya yochli Yom Kippur mechaper al shavim v'she'enin shavim. I would have thought that Yom Kippur can be mechaper even if he didn't do tshuva. V'dinu hoil v'chatas v'oshem mechaper v'Yom Kippur mechaper just like chatas and oshem are mechaper. Yom Kippur is mechaper machatz v'oshem mechaper and el shavim just like chatz v'oshem you need. Vidu you have to do tshuva. Ein mechaper el hashav. After Yom Kippur, ein mechaper el hashav. So too, Yom Kippur is only mechaper on those who do tshuva. So the Gemara says no. Have a pircha mal chatas va'asham she'ein mechaper el amazing kashaygig. Chatas and asham usually al piroiv is not mechaper on amazing. Toimer Yom Kippur she'mechaper el amazing kashaygig. It's mechaper on amazing. The hoyle mechaper amazing kashaygig mechaper al sham she'ein shavim. So maybe here too it's mechaper even if you don't do tshuva. Talmud loymar ach chilek. So here says the pasuk, the word ach is usually a miyut, to tell you that no, Yom Kippur is mechaper on mezit kashoygig. But just because we say Yom Kippur is mechaper on mezit kashoygig, doesn't mean it's mechaper al shavim, al she'ein shavim. It's also mechaper on people who don't do tshuva. So what do you see from this brisa? that Yom Kippur is mechaper only if you do tshuva. And it's a brisa. So what do you say? Stam sifra mani. Who is the brisa? Rabbi Yehuda. Usually Rabbi Yehuda is the brisa. Ika Omar shavim en loy shavim loy. And you see Rabbi Yehuda argues with Rabbi, and he says that only if you do tshuva on Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur mechaper. If you don't do tshuva, it's not mechaper. So therefore, it's a machlokes Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda. So only Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda in the Sefer of the Mishnah. By Kahanim Yisraelim are included in Sur Lazazel, the Kapar of Sur Lazazel, but it doesn't work, vice versa, that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi, that Tzuma Shel Yom is Bechaper. Says the Gemara, V'rami, Stam Sifra, if you're going to tell me, Rabbi Yehuda is Stam Sifra, and he holds that Yom Kippur is not Mechaper if you don't do Tshuva, I have a contradiction. The Tanya learned in a different brisa. Yochel Yom Kippur Mechaper al Kenes Anaboy. I would have thought Yom Kippur is Mechaper only if you fasted the Kroi Mikra Kodesh and you called it a holiday, a Yom Tov. We'll see in a moment what that means. You didn't do any melacha, but lo yisana v'lo kara Mikra Kodesh v'asa b'melacha menai. And how do I know that even if you didn't keep the halachas of Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur is mechaper on Shar Averis? Talmud loymar Yom Kippurim hu mikol makayim. It's mechaper. Whether you did tshuva, whether you kept Yom Kippur, you didn't keep Yom Kippur, it doesn't matter. It's always mechaper. So I have a contradiction. They're both brises, they're both sifras, and you tell me that Stam Sifra is Rabbi Yehuda, and the one brisa says Rabbi Yehuda that it's not mechaper unless you do tshuva, and the other brisa sounds like it's mechaper even if you don't keep Yom Kippur, even if you don't do tshuva. So it's a contradiction. Am Rabbi Eloi Kasha. Ha Rabbi v'ha Rabbi Yehuda. It's a machloikis what Rabbi Yehuda held. The way the Ritva explains this is, some held that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi with regard to Yom Kippur, and it's mechaper even if you didn't do tshuva, and some held that he argues on Rabbi and it's only mechaper if you did tshuva. Okay, that's one teretz. Rava says Hava ha Rabbi. No, they're both Rabbi, and really Rabbi Yehuda does hold like Rabbi. But so why do we find in one brisa that Yom Kippur is not mechaper if you didn't do tshuva? Umoida Rabbi himself agrees, bekaris deyoima. Rabbi himself has a limitation to how far Yom Kippur can take you. Yom Kippur can take you, it can be mechaper on Averis even if you didn't do tshuva. But it cannot be mechaper if you don't uphold Yom Kippur itself. You have to at least fast on Yom Kippur. You have to call it Mikroi Kodesh. If you want Yom Kippur to be poil, to really be effective on your behalf, to the point that it's mechaper even if you don't do tshuva, then you have to at least honor and believe and uphold the holiness of Yom Kippur. You can't do malacha, you have to call it Mikroi Kodesh. You have to do all of it. So Mamela, even Rabbi holds that with regard to the Averis of Yom Kippur, it's not mechaper on those Averis. It's not mechaper on the Averis of Chilul Yom Kippurim. They cannot be mechaper without tshuva. So it's only these Averis. I said it wrong. I was saying that it can't be mechaper in any of the Averis if you don't honor tshuva. It's not what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is saying it's not mechaper on the Averis that you're violating on Yom Kippur itself. If you don't honor Yom Kippur, those Averis are also karas, right? If you don't fast, the Chamisha Enuyim, the Malacha, right? All that. So those Averis, Rabbi holds, if you're violating them on Yom Kippur itself is not mechaper without tshuva. That needs tshuva for. So the Gemara says, I'll prove it to you. Because if you're going to say that even if you're violating Yom Kippur, you don't need to do tshuva and Yom Kippur is mechaper, I have a kasha. You'll never find a haichatimtza of somebody being punished with karas if he's over on Yom Kippur. Because right away, as soon as you're over, you have Yom Kippur that's being mechaper. So you never have the haichatimtza. Gemara says, whoa, slow down. Maybe it's talking about where a guy was over on Yom Kippur at night, but he still didn't get the kapara. He gets karas. You know why? Because he died before the day. And we know that only the day is mechaper. So you need the day. So it could be that he could get karas for being over on Yom Kippur, even if you hold Yom Kippur is mechaper. How so? If he did it at night and he died before the day came. the Gemara says, Elaima, the Gemara says no. Elaima karis diyamama l'Rebbe Leslie. You'll never come out. You can never die on karis diyamama. If you're violating Yom Kippur day, and it says be'etzem hayom is that it says karis you get for violating Yom Kippur day, you'll never have a hechetimtz of getting karis then, because as soon as you do it, you'll have a kapara. So Al Karchach Rebbe holds that Itzuma Shel Yom is not mechaper on Averis of Yom Kippur itself. So the Gemara says, 1 second, slow down. Alam Allah, you still have Eichetimtza. Even on that, where you can get Karas, even if you say Yom Kippur is mechaper on those Averis. Meshkachis la da'achol umtza, v'chankei umis, inami da'achol samach l'shgei zachamad la v'shlus l'chapir. It could be that the guy ate umtza. Umtza is raw meat, and he choked on the raw meat, and he died. So if he died, mamish, the rega that he ate, he died at the same second. So there he has the violation of Yom Kippur, and he doesn't get the atonement of Yom Kippur. Why not? Because he didn't have an extra second after the Aveira to get the atonement. He needs an extra second afterwards. He can't get the kapara b'shas Aveira, even according to Rebbe. Inami the ochel samach l'shkiyas achama, or he ate mamish before shkiyas achama, before nightfall. And he didn't have an extra rega after the achila for Yom Kippur to be mechaper for him, so that's when he gets kares. So the end of the day, we don't have a hechrech to say like Rova that Rebbe is moida on averis of kares that Yom Kippur is not mechaper unless you do tshuva, because you have echatimtis to get kares even according to Rebbe if you violate averis of Yom Kippur. Now I just want to get to the one Rashi over here, which is important, Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos, which can be very negeya. One of the Averis, the Brisa mentions, you could do on Yom Kippur is, if let's say, he does malacha, right? Or he didn't call it loy kare mikra kodesh. What does it mean loy kare mikra kodesh? What kind of aveira is that? I know you're not allowed to do malacha on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. What does it mean loy kare mikra kodesh? What aveira? What sug aveira is that? So Rashi says something very interesting on Amar Aleph. Loy kiblu beberchoisav loymer mekadesh Yisrael v'yom kippurim. He didn't daven in his davening, in his brachas, he didn't say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruch Atu Hashem mekadesh Yisrael v'yom kippurim. That's mikra kodesh. Right? He didn't say it. It sounds like that's a dinda eraisa. Tosfos right away says, Pirish bekunteris, shelekiblu olav beberchaisav. He wasn't the kabul Yom Kippur in his brachas, loimer mekadesh Yisrael v'yom haKippurim. Asks Tosfos ve'inira. To le'ashchem brachas b'mikpurim l'hava de'eraisa. It sounds like from this Rashi that this is a mitzvah de'eraisa to say, to daven on Yom Kippur and say mekadesh Yisrael v'yom kippurim. It's super interesting. If you take a look at the Ramban, actually Ramban is in this week's parsha. Always nice to have. Mikroi Kodesh, that's this week's parsha. Ramban in Parsha Emer says, Mikroi Kodesh, the word Mikroi Kodesh means, Sheyu b'yoyim hazeh, kulam kruim v'nesofim, everybody should gather in the Batei Knesiyos, l'kadesh oisoi, to sanctify Yom Kippur. Ki mitzvah al Yisrael, it's a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael, li'kavitz b'veis Elokim b'yoyim, Moyed l'kadesh hayoyim b'tefillah v'halal. The Ramban says it's a mitzvah d'oraisa tefillah on Yom Kippur, and really on every Yom Tov is a mitzvah d'oraisa. If you look at the Pri Megadim in Archaim Siman Tav Tzadi, he says l'dvarav have a tefillas Yom Tov b'tzibur d'oraisa. He says it's a mitzvah to come into the Beis Halikim and daven on Yom Kippur and other Yomim Tovim, which is really a big chiddush. I'll tell you why. Tefillah, we're about to daven Ma'ariv in a few minutes, right? Ma'ariv, Minchas Chinuch. Is it a mitzvah d'oraisa or not?
Which one?
Machlokes v'shainim.
Rambam Ramban is the famous.
Machlokes v'shainim. Rambam says at least Shachris and Mincha, right? Rambam says, mitzvahs asay b'chol yoyim. It's a mitzvah to daven every single day. Shenemar, v'avaretem Hashem Elokeichem, you should serve Hashem. And we know that avoida is avoida. Chazal says avoida shabalev. So it's a mitzvah to daven mid'oraisa every single day. Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs, counts as one of the mitzvahs, and the Ramban goes to town saying, Avad, it's not a deraisa, it's the Rabbanan, which means the Ramban holds that usually when you daven, Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv, it's only a mitzvah the Rabbanan. So this is a big chiddush. The Ramban here, in Parshas Emor, seems to say like Rashi, at least Tosfos' understanding of Rashi, that there is a sug tefillah that's the Eiraisa. You know which type of tefillah is the Eiraisa? When you daven Shachris, tefillah of Yom Tov, tefillah of Yom Kippurim. Mikroi Kodesh, according to the Ramban, it's the Eiraisa. The Ramban, regular tefillah are not the Eiraisa. There's only a tefillah when you're Shas Tzora. Yeah, it says that v'niskartem l'fnei Hashem l'keichem v'nishatem ha'aveichem. That's a Shas Tzora. That's when there's a mitzvah of tefillah according to the Ramban. That's the only time it's a mitzvah of the Eiraisa.
Well, what about if you're making kiddush? You acknowledge the day when you're making kiddush. Normally on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, Yom Kippur, there's no kiddush.
L'kadosh Hashem doesn't need tefillah. It doesn't need tefillah. It doesn't need tefillah. To daven, that's the mitzvah of davening on Yom Tov b'tzibur. By the way, it could be a big enough communal halacha. What if you have on Yom Tov, a young 13-year-old wants to go up to the Amud? If according to Ramban and Rashi, we're learning here that Mikroi Kodesh, this week's parasha teaches that tefillah b'Yom Tov is a mitzvah d'oraisa b'tzibur. You know, you got to make sure that he's a gadol, right? It could be enough communal halacha. But either way, it's an interesting machloikas of here Rishonim, whether you dash Mikroi Kodesh and Yom Tov, that it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to daven b'tzibur on Yom Tov. And Venirul Rabbeinu Tam Tosfos here argues. He says avada, that's not a d'oraisa. Like ashkchen brachas b'mikaprim lava d'oraisa, and it just Mikra Kodesh means that he's not shoyvis machmas kedushas hayoyim. He's just laying around lazy. You ask him, why aren't you doing malacha? He's saying, it's not saying I'm not doing malacha because the yoyim is kodesh la doinenu. It's not because of that. His intention is because he's just lazy. He's lazy, too lazy to get out of bed and do malacha. That would not be the fulfillment of being shoyvis memalacha properly on Yom Kippur. It has to be with the intention of kedushas hayom. That's what Tosfos understands Mikroi Kodesh. Okay, either way, let's just see if we can get a little bit weiter over here. Echad Yisrael, the Mishnah said that with regard to the Soir La'azazel, it's mechaper for everybody. Says the Gemara, Gufa Kasha, Ktoni Echad Yisrael Echad Kan Meshuach, that it's mechaper for everybody, V'hadar Tani, and then the Mishnah asks, Ma be Yisrael Kan V'kai Meshuach. It sounds like there is a difference. Rav Yehuda Achikamer, Echad Yisrael Echad Kan V'echad Kai Meshuach, Miskapen B'sar Mishtalech B'shar Averis. That when it comes to all the other Averis, Kahanim Yisraelim are equal, that the Soir La'azazel is mechaper for everybody. B'shar Averis. There ain't chiluk b'neim, there's no difference between them. Uma, ben Yisrael Kahanim L'kai Meshuach. So what is the difference between Kahanim and Yisraelim and L'kai Meshuach? That's only Elashah Par Mechaper L'Kahanim Tumas Mikdash V'Kedashov. That's with regard to the Aveir of Tumas Mikdash V'Kedashov, that you need, the Kahanim need a higher level of kapara, a different kind of kapara that can be included in the Soir La'azazel. The Meshech Chachmah says, why taka? And Mani Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda. Why taka can't the Kahanim be included in the kapara of the Soir Pnimi when it comes to Tumas Mikdash V'Kedashov? Why do they need their own carbon, their own par? Meshech Chachmah says,
איזה שאר עבירות מתכפרים לישראל בשעיר המשתלח?
כל העבירות. Mishnah says all the averos.
איזה שאר עבירות? כל העבירות מתכפרים לישראל? בשעיר המשתלח?
The Soir Mishlech V'chaper and Shar Averos, everything. Zodon, Shgogo, Asay, Lois Asay, Mises Bezdin, Krisis. Mishnah mentions a whole list.
מה התשובה?
מה זה? מה זה בן אדם לחברוי? For every Jew. בן אדם לחברוי.
מה עם תשובה?
No, Pashtus not. Pashtus you have to...
Humus says clearly, until he asks, he has to have Mechila.
Yeah, you have to ask Mechila, you have to do tshuva, that's for sure.
אז העבירות בן אדם למקום.
Yeah, Pashtus. Yeah, that's a different sugya. But either way, the Rabbi Yehuda holds the Soir La'azazel is mechaper for Kahanim Yisraelim equally when it comes to Shar Averos, the Tanya. But for the Tumas Mikdash V'Kedashov, you need a par. The Tanya. The Brisa says, "Zechipras Mikdash Hakodesh Elfnai V'Lefnim." Any tumah that happened Lefnai V'Lefnim is oil moed zehechel mizbeach k'mashmoy yichaper elu azaris kahanim k'mashmoy ama kol elu Yisrael yichaper elu halavim Hushvu kulon lekapara achas. The last word yechaper basically sums everybody up lekapara achas when it comes to the Sar Mishtalech and Shar Averis. Shemiskaprim b'Sar Mishtalech v'Shar Averis. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds with Shar Averis everybody's equal and they get an atonement with the Sar Mishtalech. Reb Shimon Omer, Shimon says no. Kishem shadam asar nasa b'fnim mechaper al Yisrael al Thomas Mishra Kedoshav. Just like the dam asar that's nasa b'fnim is only mechaper on Yisrael, and with regard to the Aver Thomas Mishra Kedoshav. Kach damapar mechaper al kahanim al Thomas Mishra Kedoshav. So damapar is mechaper on the kahanim. So the kahanim Yisraelim need two separate kaparas on the Aver of Thomas Mishra Kedoshav. The Yisraelim are neskaper with the Sar Lapnimi, the Sar Lashem, and the kahanim are neskaper with the damapar. And so too, kshem sheviduyoy. Shall Sar Mishtaper Mechaper Yisrael B'Shar Averis. Just like the vidoy of the Sar Lazozel is Mechaper on Yisrael B'Shar Averis, Kach Viduyoy shall par Mechaper al Kahana B'Shar Averis. So too, the vidoy of the par is Mechaper Kahana B'Shar Averis. So Lamaiser, Reb Shimon says that the Kahanim are not included even B'Shar Averis in the Sar Lazozel. They need their own kapara on all the Averis. The par is Mechaper and the Kahanim are all their Averis. The Vida is Mechaper and Shar Averis, and the Zrikas Adam is Mechaper and Thomas Migdsh Kedoshav. That's Reb Shimon's opinion. And I know we're approaching like Ba'omer, so we'll say over a verse from the Meshech Chachmah. Why does Reb Shimon say the Kahanim need a separate kapara for Shar Averis? So the Gemara, so Meshech Chachmah says in this exparsha, says because Kahanim have much more time than the rest of Klal Yisrael. They have much more time. They don't have to work. They're supported with the Chavdalas Matnas Kahuna, right? They don't have to work as hard as the rest of us. So if Kahanim don't have to work as hard, so they have more time to learn Torah. They have more time to learn Torah. It's a taina. Why didn't you learn and why didn't you know? What do you mean Shar Averis and Tumas Mikdash Goshav? You have to know. You can't be in a skaper on the same level with the same soyer on Shar Averis the rest of Klal Yisrael is in a skaper. If you had time to learn and if you had time to know, you had time to do better. You could have done better. So you need a different type of kapara according to Reb Shimon. And that's why Reb Shimon argues with Rabbi Yehuda. Hey, Reb Shimon l'shitasai.
Maybe the Kohanim, they have unique mitzvahs on them that Shar Yisrael do not have.
Oh, so in other words, there's reason, so we expect more from them.
No, because they have mitzvahs that Azor cannot perform. They don't perform the avod in the base of mikvah.
And how does that translate to Shar Averis? So why by Shar Averis do they need a separate kapara?
It makes sense what you said before, because
Their global
makes sense.
responsibility is greater.
Aha.
So they have a different degree of acquirance than
מה שהוא אמר, מה שהרב אמר, יש make sense more.
Aha. Okay, let's finish one line so we could start tomorrow from Reb Shimon of Vadei Hushvu. According to Reb Shimon, the Torah equates the kapara with of Kahanim to Yisraelim. So why does Reb Shimon say you need a different kapara for Kahanim by Shar Averis? It says Yichaper in the pasuk, the end of the pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda is right. Yichaper means it's inclusive. It's all inclusive. Gemara says no. My hish with the bnei kapara nu. The Torah says that they're all inclusive to a kapara. It means that they're all bnei kapara. Miu kol chad v'chad mechap b'naseh. But each one needs their own carbon to be neskaper. Kahanim with the par and the Yisraelim with the Sar Lazazel, the Sar Pnim, the Sar Lazazel. Okay, tomorrow we'll continue with my time with Reb Shimon.